The lights dimmed at the Shrine Auditorium, and 23-year-old Whitney Houston felt her world crashing down. In 30 minutes, she would face the biggest audience of her life at the 1986 Grammy Awards. But right now, she was hyperventilating in a backstage bathroom, convinced she was about to humiliate herself in front of music royalty. What happened next would change both women's lives forever and create a secret bond that lasted decades. Before we dive deeper, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for more incredible untold stories from music's greatest legends. February 25th, 1986. The 28th Annual Grammy Awards was supposed to be Whitney's coronation night. She had spent the entire morning in her Beverly Hills hotel room, surrounded by designer gowns and jewelry worth more than most people's houses, but feeling emptier than she'd ever felt in her life. The numbers told the story of a phenomenon. Her debut album had sold over 10 million copies worldwide. Saving All My Love for You had topped the charts for 3 consecutive weeks. She was nominated for 3 Grammy Awards, including Best Pop Vocal Performance, Best New Artist, and Best Pop Vocal Performance by a Female. The girl from Newark had already conquered the charts, broken racial barriers on MTV, and become the face of a new generation of crossover artists. But the Grammys represented something different. Industry respect, validation from her peers, acceptance by the musicians she'd grown up idolizing. This wasn't about sales numbers or radio play. This was about being recognized as an artist, not just a product. The pressure had been building for weeks. Her record label, Arista, had planned an elaborate after-party, confident that Whitney would sweep her categories. Music journalists had already written their headlines: Whitney's Night, the new queen of pop, Houston, we have a star. Everyone assumed this was a formality, a victory lap for the year's most dominant new artist. But Whitney knew something they didn't. She'd been having doubts about her authenticity for months, questions that kept her awake at night and followed her into recording sessions. Was she really an artist, or just a very talented performer of other people's songs? Did she deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as the women who had paved the way for her? That afternoon, during rehearsals at the Shrine Auditorium, those doubts had crystallized into full-blown terror. As Whitney stood in the wings watching Aretha Franklin rehearse her performance of Freeway of Love, something inside her snapped. "I can't do this," Whitney whispered to her mother, Cissy Houston, who was serving as her unofficial handler that night. "Look at her. Look at how she owns that stage. I'm about to follow the Queen of Soul with my little pop song." Cissy, a gospel legend in her own right, tried to calm her daughter. "Baby, you earned your spot here." "Did I?" Whitney's voice cracked. "Or am I just the pretty girl they're using to sell records?" This wasn't typical pre-performance jitters. This was an identity crisis happening in real time, 30 minutes before the most important performance of Whitney's young career. The backstory makes this moment even more intense. Whitney had grown up in the church, watching her mother Cissy sing backup for Aretha Franklin during the 1960s. Little Whitney would sit in recording studios, mesmerized by Aretha's power, her authenticity, her complete command of every note. To Whitney, Aretha wasn't just a singer, she was the standard by which all vocalists were measured. Now at 23, Whitney was being positioned as the next big thing, the voice that would bridge R&B and pop. But in this moment, she felt like a fraud. "I learned to sing watching her," Whitney said, tears streaming down her carefully applied makeup. "How do you follow your inspiration? How do you stand next to the woman who taught you what your voice could do?" But here's what Whitney didn't know. Aretha Franklin had been watching her too. Earlier that evening, Aretha had been in her dressing room when she heard Whitney's voice carrying down the hallway during soundcheck. She'd stopped everything, told her team to be quiet, and listened to every note of Whitney's rehearsal of Saving All My Love for You. "Lord have mercy," Aretha had said to her manager. "That child has something special." But Aretha also recognized something else in Whitney's voice during that soundcheck. Fear. The same fear she'd battled her entire career. The fear of not being enough, of being an imposter, of stepping into spaces where you're not sure you belong. 23 minutes before showtime, Whitney was having a full panic attack in the women's restroom. She couldn't catch her breath, couldn't stop shaking, couldn't imagine walking on that stage. That's when the door opened. "Honey, what's wrong?" Whitney looked up to see Aretha Franklin standing in the doorway, still in her rehearsal clothes, holding a cup of tea. "Miss Franklin, I'm so sorry. I just need a minute." "Child, don't you apologize to me. You tell me what's got you all torn up." And for the first time that night, Whitney told someone the complete truth. "I don't belong here. Everyone's going to see that I'm not good enough. I'm not like you. I'm not authentic. I'm just a pop singer trying to play with the real artists." Whitney's voice broke as she continued. "You came up through the church, through struggle, through real life. You earned every note you sing. Me? I was groomed for this, trained like a racehorse. My mother sang backup for you, for God's sake. I learned my runs listening to your records. How do I stand on the same stage as the woman who taught me what my voice could do?" The words poured out like a confession. "They dress me up, they style my hair, they choose my songs, and everyone calls me the new voice of my generation. But what if I'm just a pretty package wrapped around someone else's artistry? What if the only reason I'm here is because I look the part?" Aretha listened without interrupting, recognizing the deep insecurity that fame couldn't cure. She'd seen it in herself, in Diana Ross, in every woman who tried to navigate the impossible expectations of the music industry. "Child," Aretha said softly, "let me tell you something about authenticity. Authenticity isn't about where you came from or how you got here. It's about what you do with the gift once you recognize you have it." Whitney looked up, tears still streaming down her face. "You think because your mama sang backup, that somehow makes your voice less legitimate? Honey, musical families exist because music is passed down like DNA. You didn't steal your voice. You inherited it. There's a difference." Aretha set down her tea and looked Whitney directly in the eyes. "Let me tell you something, Whitney Houston. I've been watching you, and you've got something that can't be taught, can't be manufactured, and sure can't be faked. You think I don't know authentic when I hear it? I've been in this business since you were in diapers, and I can spot a fake from 3 studios away. You ain't fake, baby. You just scared." Whitney stopped crying, suddenly focused on every word. "You want to know a secret?" Aretha continued. "The first time I performed at an awards show, 1968, I threw up twice before going on stage. You know why? Because I was so scared people would think I was just another church girl who didn't belong in their fancy auditorium." Whitney couldn't believe what she was hearing. Aretha Franklin, the most confident performer she'd ever seen, had felt exactly what she was feeling right now. "But here's what I learned," Aretha said, sitting down next to Whitney on the cold bathroom floor. "You ain't following me tonight, honey. You're walking beside me. We're sisters in this thing." What happened next was something Whitney would never forget, never publicly discuss, but would carry with her for the rest of her career. Aretha Franklin gave Whitney Houston a masterclass in performance psychology, right there on the bathroom floor of the Shrine Auditorium, 15 minutes before showtime. "First thing," Aretha said, "forget every person in that audience except one. Pick somebody you love, somebody who believes in you, and sing to them. Make it a conversation between you and that person." Whitney nodded, thinking of her cousin Dionne Warwick, who would be in the audience. "Second thing, your nerves ain't your enemy. That energy you're feeling, that's power. That's your body getting ready to do something magnificent. Don't fight it, use it." Aretha helped Whitney stand up, guiding her to the mirror. "Now look at yourself. Really look. You see that scared little girl from Newark? I don't. I see a woman who's about to show the world something they've never seen before. You're not trying to be me, honey. You're becoming you." But the most important lesson was still coming. "You know what separates good singers from great ones?" Aretha asked. "Great singers understand that perfection is the enemy of connection. People don't want to hear you hit every note perfectly. They want to feel something. They want you to touch that place in their heart that only music can reach." Whitney was listening intently, soaking up every word. "When you get out there," Aretha continued, "don't think about technique. Don't think about the critics or the cameras or the competition. Think about why you started singing in the first place. What does this song mean to you?" Whitney closed her eyes, remembering her childhood in the church, remembering her first solo at New Hope Baptist. remembering the feeling of her voice connecting with something larger than herself. "There she is," Aretha smiled. "There's the singer I heard during soundcheck." 10 minutes before showtime, Aretha walked Whitney back toward the stage area. But before they reached the wings, she pulled her aside one more time. "Whitney, I want you to remember something. 20 years from now, there's going to be another young singer, scared and shaking, wondering if she belongs. And you're going to be the one to tell her that she does. This moment right here, this is how legends are made." The stage manager called Whitney's name. It was time. As Whitney walked toward the stage, Aretha called out softly, "Hey, Whitney." Whitney turned around. "Make them remember why they fell in love with music in the first place." What happened during Whitney's performance that night became one of the most talked about moments in Grammy history. But the full story of what happened backstage remained a secret between two queens. Whitney walked onto the Shrine Auditorium stage transformed. Gone was the nervous young woman from the bathroom. In her place stood someone who understood her power, her purpose, her place in music history. She opened her mouth and sang "Saving All My Love for You" with a vulnerability and strength that left the audience speechless. Every note was filled with emotion. Every phrase told a story. She wasn't just performing the song, she was living it. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Veteran music journalists later called it one of the greatest live vocal performances they'd ever witnessed. Whitney had arrived not as a pop princess or a pretty face, but as a serious artist with something important to say. But here's what the audience didn't know. Throughout her entire performance, Whitney was looking at one person in the wings, Aretha Franklin, who was standing just out of camera view, tears streaming down her face, mouthing every word along with her. After the show, Whitney found Aretha backstage. They embraced without saying a word. They both knew something magical had happened. "Thank you," Whitney whispered. "Thank me by doing that for someone else someday," Aretha replied. That night, Whitney won her first Grammy Award. But the real victory had happened in a bathroom, 15 minutes before showtime, when one legend decided to lift up another. For the next 26 years until Whitney's death in 2012, the two women maintained a special bond. They never publicly discussed their Grammy night conversation, but they stayed in touch. Aretha would call Whitney before big performances. Whitney would send flowers to Aretha's concerts. They understood something that the music industry often forgets, that lifting each other up makes everyone stronger. The technique Aretha taught Whitney that night, singing to one person in the audience, channeling nerves into power, prioritizing connection over perfection, became Whitney's signature approach for every major performance of her career. During Whitney's legendary 1991 Super Bowl performance of the Star-Spangled Banner, she was singing to her mother, Sissy. During I Will Always Love You at the 1994 American Music Awards, she was singing to her daughter, Bobby Christina. Every time Whitney needed to access her deepest emotional truth on a stage, she used Aretha's lesson. But the impact went even deeper than technique. That conversation in the bathroom gave Whitney something she'd been lacking: the confidence to be vulnerable, the permission to be human, the understanding that authenticity was more valuable than perfection. Years later, Whitney would pass Aretha's wisdom to other young singers. When Alicia Keys was nervous before her first Grammy performance in 2002, Whitney pulled her aside and shared the same lessons Aretha had taught her 16 years earlier. When Beyoncé was struggling with imposter syndrome early in her solo career, Whitney gave her the same speech about walking beside, not behind, the legends who came before. "Aretha taught me that greatness isn't about being better than everyone else," Whitney told Alicia Keys that night in 2002. "It's about being authentic enough to touch people's hearts." The ripple effect of that 15-minute bathroom conversation has influenced countless performances and empowered dozens of artists over the decades. In 2017, 5 years after Whitney's death, Aretha Franklin was asked about that night during a rare interview. She'd never publicly discussed the backstage moment, but something made her want to share the story. "Whitney was special from the beginning," Aretha said, "but that night she learned how to channel her specialness. She stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be real. That's when she became legendary." The interviewer asked if Aretha regretted not going public with the story sooner. "Some moments are too sacred to share while people are still living," Aretha replied. But now that Whitney's gone, I want people to know. She wasn't just born great. She chose greatness again and again every time she stepped on a stage. Today, that bathroom in the Shrine Auditorium is part of music history. Though most people don't know it, it's where two queens met in vulnerability and created a legacy that extends far beyond their individual careers. The 1986 Grammy Awards marked the beginning of Whitney Houston's dominance in popular music, but it also marks something more important. The moment she learned that true strength comes not from hiding your fears, but from transforming them into art. Aretha Franklin passed away in 2018, taking with her thousands of stories and countless moments of wisdom shared with younger artists. But her 15-minute masterclass in that Grammy bathroom lives on every time a young singer finds the courage to be vulnerable, every time an artist chooses authenticity over perfection, every time someone realizes that we all walk beside each other in this journey. Whitney Houston's first Grammy performance wasn't just a star-making moment. It was a masterclass in how legends create other legends, not through competition, but through compassion. Sometimes the most important performances happen before you ever reach the stage. Sometimes the greatest victories happen in the moments when we help each other transform fear into power. And sometimes a 15-minute conversation in a bathroom can change the course of music history. That's the untold story of Grammy Night 1986, when Aretha Franklin saved Whitney Houston's performance by teaching her the most important lesson of her career. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real.